Okay, so I wanted to just get some more knowledge about the Magna Carta. So I just want to start with this slide here, the common law, because that's the centerpiece of the whole thing. And from that, which is also how our system that we created to make sure that we are in charge of government, which is the people's trinity, all right? So these two things are at the center, right? Trial by jury, annulment by jury, common law, private prosecution, right? So anyone who's found to commit any crimes against the people through legislation, any member of parliament stands as a man or woman under common law, alrighty? And that's that they need to stand before the people to answer for crimes that have been a source of loss, harm, a breach of the peace, or some kind of fraud. And if you look at these politicians, they're committing all four. All right, so we're going to go back to the common law slide. And now I'm going to read you some of the history. Why the Magna Carta is the British Constitution and the English and Commonwealth Constitution, right? Still to this day. The British Constitution elevates and enshrines the authority of the people to be over and above the authority of government, which is in alignment with the hierarchy of creation, right? So the hierarchy of creation, I've put slides up about that before. Natural law first, so that's the system of permanent dynamics built into the universe that we have no control over. And then you've got common law, which is man's best interpretation of natural law into the physical realm. And that's by way of the consciousness. That's the conduit by which we do the interpretation with. And then you've got governmental legislation, I'm not even going to call it law, which sets the limits of what government is allowed to do. I'm going to read that again. It sets the limits of what government is allowed to do. All right. It's got nothing to do with what it can do to us. Right. So then we've got to think, how do they subvert it? What do they do to invert it? Because that's what they've done. They've made it, the power grabbers who control government have made it so a creation of ours, it gets used against us, right? And turns us into its subjects. So now back into more info about the Magna Carta. The principles contained within the Magna Carta are not new. The Magna Carta re-established what was already in place, that being the common law tradition where there was already a common law coronation oath with the monarch of the time, which is just the head of state. Just remember that, it's nothing special. It's a job, was required to take, which set the terms of their role, right? The monarch only had the authority to stay in office if they acted within the confines of what the people collectively agreed to the role of monarch can do. Therefore, the principles contained within Magna Carta were already established thousands of years ago. These traditions go back to Ireland, Scotland, and and to most people's surprise, mainland Europe. I did speak about in the previous one. Before the Napoleon Wars, which brought in Napoleonic law, a type of canon law, aka Roman law. So I'll say that again, right? These traditions go back to Ireland, Scotland, and to most people's surprise, mainland Europe before the Napoleon Wars, which brought in Napoleonic law, a type of canon law, which is another type of Roman law. So why did the common law need to be reestablished in England? The monarch of the time was King John, who was a tyrant and stepped well outside the boundaries of the grant of authority given to the role of head of state, which we call monarch. It's a job title with terms of employment known as the coronation oath. That's all that a monarch is. By committing horrendous crimes against the people, including mutilation, rape, torture, seizing land. So just stay with that for a moment. Imagine if that was happening to us today. Now, some people might be saying we are in different ways, but that was physically happening to the population, right? And they are meant to be supreme, above, any kind of governmental type rulership. And this is what was happening to them. So basically, the barons reminded King John that the laws of England already exist, to which he swore to protect in his coronation oath. And if he wishes to retain the position of office of sovereign, it's just a vessel that holds the people's sovereignty. That's all it is. He is going to need to agree to the terms of the rewrite of the existing laws. Only now it was drafted in the form of a codified document titled the Magna Carta, which is Latin for Great Charter of Liberties. The barons were simply acting in accordance to their duty under the established British common law tradition. Alrighty. So have I got that slide up, the common law? All right. They're already acting in accordance with that. That's all they were doing. They were just re-establishing it. A tradition of rules the people agreed to abide by that is formalized by being arranged in a system known as a constitution. So I'll read that again. A tradition of rules the people agreed to abide by that is formalized by being arranged in a system known as the constitution. So that's what a constitution is, right? It's a system, it's a tradition of rules that the people agree to abide by. So anyone who tells you something else, did we ever have anything to do with the system, you know, the rules that we agreed to abide by here in Australia? Did any one of us have anything to do with that? We didn't. They put up this phony document that they made look like it was a constitution, and then they allowed us to vote for it by subverting our consciousness. That's how they did it, you know, and making us believe that that was it, just like I showed you in the Bill of Rights in the previous slide, right? It's that they took out the most powerful part, and because people had no idea about that's what an actual constitution is, they just went, oh, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, that sounds like my rights are protected. I'll go with that. That's just how easily it's done. So King John did not sign the charter. Instead, he placed the royal seal on which it would, he placed the royal seal on it, which made it exist in perpetuity. That just means it's forever binding on all future monarchs. And so perpetuity means across all realms. That's mental, physical, spiritual. And only the people by way of constitutional convention have the power to amend or repeal it, because the people are sovereign, not the office of sovereign. Only a being that exists in nature can interpret natural law into the made version we call common law. All right, so then you'll get a lot of people who are what I'd call Magna Carta deniers, because we love that, using that word deny. So let's just go with that, because that seems to be the zeitgeist of the day. You're a denier. All righty. Number one, claims the Pope invalidated the Magna Carta are completely false. To believe that, one needs to believe that the Pope had authority to invalidate an agreement he had no part in establishing. In actual fact, by making such a claim, the Pope was acting ultra vires, which means outside of his jurisdiction. He had no business getting involved with a system of law that was operating within England at the time. So unless you believe in magical thinking, there is no substance to that argument. Number two, claims that King John was under duress to sign Magna Carta, the Great Charter of Liberties, which makes it invalid, is also incorrect. He was under duress by the fact that he was bound to his coronation oath, and all the barons were doing were to act as his peers, judging him on behalf of the people, essentially under a court. So effectively, they set up a court of record to bring him to heel, letting him know that his grant of authority comes from the people to fulfill the role of an officer in service of the people, just as they are. The only difference is that he holds the highest office of the land. Therefore, he is not above the rule of law. If you've seen me do work on the rule of law, all that means is that the law, so natural law, rules. That's all it means, nothing special. All right, really basic. Now, remember, King John never signed Magna Carta. He sealed it. He went one above, right? So sealed means that it's permanent. The self-elected born to rule class, these are what we call the deep state, realized they needed to eradicate all traces of knowledge that the people have authority over government from the collective conscience if they were going to be able to continue their reign of domination. 7 years later, they began working on removing the Magna Carta 1215's power to control government from the collective conscience through creating a legislative rewrite of the Magna Carta, giving themselves Parliament, which is a fiction, that cannot be sovereign, nor has the power to grant liberties to its creator. It gave itself the power to write laws, then set about changing the legislative rewrite over time to create a false paper trail that acts as evidence that the Magna Carta is invalid. So there's a lot of info there to digest, guys. So if you're really struggling with that, I suggest you repeat and hit and listen to it again. I'm just going to pause for one moment. All right, back. So hopefully I've got about another minute or so to go. The born to rule class's greatest fear was Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, which was the security clause that deals with treason, which means the usurpation of the people's sovereignty, where the fiction gains control over its creator, and contained a remedy that peacefully and honourably unites the people to seize back control of the levers of power and bring those responsible to face a jury of the people as a common man in their private and unlimited capacity. All right, so I'll read that again. The Magna Carta contains the remedy that peacefully, okay, it's really important to understand, peacefully and honourably unites the people to seize back control of the levers of power and bring those responsible to face a jury of the people as a common man, right? In their private and unlimited capacity. This is how the deep state cabal, we just take them down, right? And you won't hear Trump talking about this. So all these people who are Trump lovers, sorry, you're not going to like what I've just said there. He will never tell you this, right? Because he's part of it. You know, until they come and say this, they're part of it, guys. It's that simple. And I know you're not going to be happy about that. They feared the 1215 Magna Carta because treason is the highest crime according to British constitutional law, because it's the murder of an entire nation. The penalty for treason is full asset stripping and the gallows. The second highest crime is sedition, which means to deny the Constitution. The penalty for sedition is full asset stripping and life in prison. So just this is really good for all this, anyone who's a police officer, you really need to hear this, right? It's really important because you are complicit in all of this, because you are meant to be upholding the law, not the legal, not legislation, but the people gave you a grant of authority to uphold the law, and you are not doing it. You are committing war crimes against the people by upholding the legal and legislation, because they are crimes. They are natural law transgressions, and your conscience would know that. So that's really important you understand that. The argument that the Magna Carta was written well before any of us were born and none of our names appear on it, nor did any of us sign it, means it has nothing to do with us, right? That's an argument. I've heard that. Christopher James is really good at saying that. On the surface, that appeals to follow logical thinking. Therefore, it appeals to the intellect. And when I was learning this appealed to me as well, so I fell for it. Until I started getting a grasp on what natural law is and how it's connected to the Magna Carta. This is a line of thinking. This line of thinking is a trap to net those without clear understanding and definition of law. So until I had a clear understanding and definition of law, I fell for it too. All right, and that's why it's really important to get your definitions, guys. For the above argument to be valid, right, one needs to first explain how natural law does not apply to them, because the Magna Carta is man's best attempt at interpreting natural law from the spiritual realm via the conduit of the conscience to develop a system in the service of equity and shared responsibility in the physical realm. That's what so if you don't think that applies to you, then yeah, by all means, dismiss it. But if you believe that you know, natural law applies to you, because if you don't, then try and jump off a cliff and see if you levitate. All right, throw a rock up in the sky and see if it doesn't come down. So if you don't believe it applies to you, then first you need to answer those questions. So therefore, it was very carefully constructed to protect the people's ability for self-determination and self-governance. So who here wishes to deny their needs for self-determination? If you want to deny the Magna Carta, then you first need to deny your needs for self-determination, because that is your codified agreement between those who came before you and those we elect into service of us. That's what that is. So anyway, I just wanted to make that really clear, guys. That'll do it for now.